Hello, welcome to the shorter version of my podcast with Martin, the smaller, shorter format. We're specifically talking about his last book and his new book, Culling of Souls. And it's a great high fantasy book. It's a journey, it's politics, it's the world, it's so many things. But what Martin does best is he talks and I shut up, and I hope you enjoy listening to him. Pauses. I'm going to pauses because you and I have been talking for an hour and we haven't discussed the books.
Okay.
And your wife has already pointed out that one of these days we actually need to focus on the books. Right? So
that was her message to you. Yeah.
Yes, and she's correct. She's correct. You know, we need to have a section where, because what I'll do as well is I'll actually, although I'll put the whole podcast out, I will deliberately cut out a section and have a separate another episode where we're just talking about the book from the
that works for me. Yeah,
and because your wife is right, we get on here and we have chatted for an hour. And
I was gonna say, like, I was trying to look discreetly how long it has been. Yeah, it's been about an hour.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. So yeah, we're gonna do this bit now is going to be just about the books, and so
all right.
Introduce the books, please.
The books, plural. So, if this is the first time watching the podcast with me on it, my name is Martin R. Nelson, and I have now written 2 books in my high fantasy series called the Annals of Tessian. The first book, Children of the Dying Hearth, came out in 2021, I think, 2022, thereabouts. I sat on that book for quite a while. It was more or less a completed work. I was writing it while I was abroad in Germany, and then I wrote it again really finished it when I was living in Southern California. And the sequel is now out. It came out this last December. It's called The Culling of Souls. And both books essentially follow 6 central characters. They're characters, actually, I have a copy of the second book here. It's there's the cover. You can pose my face. There's also them behind me. If I can do my best Vanna White impression here. The 6 characters are symbolized by the 6 symbols that kind of not summarize their arcs, but deal with them. And some are repeat characters from the first book. And essentially the world of Tessian is world of the Annals of Tessian is high fantasy world where there are 4 continents that are all united by this one major city called the Crux. And within the Crux is a lot of corruption, as you would kind of see with any major city that unites a lot of places. The 6 characters for each book essentially introduce something new about the world while introducing a kind of different point of view for a central theme. This is where I had someone recently tell me that it reminded them of Cloud Atlas, where there's different narrators across time spans and across distances that together they share a central arc. And that the first book really is about the title, Children of the Dying Hearth, which we've talked about on previous podcasts, comes from the idea that sometimes the thing that's holding you back is your unwillingness to get out into the uncomfortable world beyond. You are far more comfortable being in a dying home. You're more comfortable being at a fire that's about to go out than you are saying there's a cold world out there. I need to brave it for a better future. And so that first book really deals with, it could be the classic hero's tale. The main character that a lot of people would say, like, this is the main person, is a figure named Tessador, who is really archetypal in a fantasy sense, where it's the teenage boy who is basically told he might be the heir to this lost empire that used to rule over all of Tesserus. And he's kind of one that it's fun to write because he's really fun to write in the sense that you can really inject so many insecurities to what I see would be the realistic expectations of if you told a 15-year-old, uh, we were just talking a little bit ago about the different classes and hierarchies within our current society. Uh, if you were to tell a 15-year-old from a low income family, uh, you're in line to be the next president or next ruler of the world or the next bigwig. You're gonna inherit all of the Hilton Empire or whatever big institution you want to say. Um, there's obviously some boyish excitement of like, ooh, look at all these things, but there's also the threats that come with that of, am I even up for this? And so he's very archetypal in that sense. But there's five other characters that all share the same sort of theme of you need to get out of your comfort zone of, and his is essentially being a servant, get out of the comfort zone that you're in. And for him and the main elf character, it's actually moving distances. It's getting out of what they've known from a life perspective or a just their background of what they've been. For the elf, it's getting out of the actual geography because all he knows is his homeland. And through a series of events, he essentially has to leave that homeland, which he's barred from doing because he's only 600 years old. And for an elf, that's really young, but it's for him, it's really fun to kind of juxtapose. Yes, he's old for our standards, and the book actually makes a note of this midway through that when Tessador, the main boy character, is talking to him and one of his other companions, he's like, yeah, he's 600 years old, but he's still a kid. And that's something that was also really fun to play with as a writer, because we think of once you hit your 20s, 30s, you should know enough about the world that you can get by. And how could you not know about the world at 600? But if you're an elf that lives for 10,000 years, well, 600 is like being 12, right?
Yeah, yeah.
For other characters, it's the comfort zone is Damien, who's one of the rulers in the Crux. He's playing by the rules all the time. He's a very honorable ruler. He's called the Pentarch of the people because he's one of the five rulers, five Pentarchs, and he's always thinking of the people. He's almost obnoxiously noble in that sense, and his comfort zone is that cleanliness of politics that he's realizing early on he might need to get his hands dirty if he wants to see certain political rivals who are filthy with corruption removed. And so that first book really is dealing with getting out of your comfort zone is the easiest way to start your journey. Um, no, I've mentioned this on previous podcasts. No great hero's journey was ever done in the armchair of their living room.
Yeah.
There's a almost direct reference there to Bilbo Baggins, right? All he wants is his armchair and his books and his fireplace and his tea cakes. And it's this first book is really my attempt to one, start the groundwork for the fantasy series, but two, point out that it doesn't matter if you're a mixed race individual like Faye, who's one of the narrators, if you're a middle-aged, established individual like Damien, or if you're a kid, um, that we all have a comfort zone, and getting out of it is the only way to take that first step to improvement, to the person you might want to be. The second book, The Culling of Souls, is again taking a central theme on six characters. Um, Tessador's back, Faye's back, Damien's back. There's a couple new ones in there. Athena, who's another Pentarch, who's a dwarf, who's pretty brash. She's got a big beard and a mouth like a sailor at times. Um, the the central theme of this one is there's oftentimes a part of yourself that's holding you back. And we all have a multiplicity of kind of personalities and archetypes living within us. Everyone has that child part that you talked about early on, saying, you know what, if there's a vanilla milkshake,
Yeah.
well, I'm having that vanilla milkshake. um, Now, I'm not saying the vanilla milkshake's holding you back from anything, but everyone has levels of personalities within themselves
Yeah.
that is it's painfully necessary sometimes to remove part of that. And it's it's the act of where the title comes from, culling your soul. Of as a Latin teacher, I can tell you the etymology of culling comes from the same word for cultivate, but it's you cultivate essentially by excising or cutting out a part that is holding you back. Anyone who's worked in a garden knows you have to prune certain bushes, and if you don't, the bush won't grow as well. It will actually grow in a malformed way, and people are no different. And the second book is really a similar attempt to look at kind of not necessarily six stages of life, but six areas of life through each of those six narrators. That sometimes the thing holding you back is a memory, and you don't need to let it go, but you need to make peace with it. That's actually one of the newer characters who's narrating is Sig. He's one of Tessitore companions, and I he was one of the more enjoyable and far more emotional story arcs to write because his he is totally haunted by his past, and it's something that has carried him through life. And just as most people, if they have a very traumatic memory, it will carry them only so far. But if they want to grow into having a positive relationship, if they want to grow into having a peaceful relationship or a peaceful life, they need to make peace and essentially not, it's again, they're cutting it out in a way that is growing,
Because it's
which is a very kind of counterintuitive thing. I'm cutting this away to grow.
but it's difficult, isn't it? Because when somebody has a traumatic memories, it's the
Hmm.
difference between overcoming the fact it haunts you in your day-to-day
Hmm.
life as opposed to accepting it's a part of your reality that's behind you.
Yeah,
It's still there, but one has you looking over your shoulder every day and
yeah,
being afraid to go to bed without the light switch on, and the other is it doesn't have to define my tomorrow.
yeah. And this isn't to say you have to remove the lesson of it too. And I think that's one of the things that people really struggle with. Is like if I hold on to this traumatic memory, if I hold on to the hatred that it builds up or the bitterness that it brings up, then this will never happen again. It's like you
Yeah,
can sit with that. You can sit with the bitterness, sit with the anger, sit with the hate. Sound more and more like a Sith at this point, but sit with it and eventually accept it. Doesn't mean then that you remove the lesson of it.
yeah,
You can still be wary of things. You can still, oh, that's a red flag. I should be aware of that. But it doesn't. Your your healthiest path forward is is not to let that emotion guide you. And there's actually, I'll say this and then have you respond. There's a moment in the book where Tessitore, who has made it to Firefall, which is this location where there's a group of monks that are essentially going to train him to be this next emperor to help overthrow the Crux. There's some rather emotional scenes while he's there, and one of them, the lead monk who's really leading his training, says, "This is just my philosophy that I just throw into the book, and it's fully me, and all the reading I've done with it in the past. But emotions in themselves are not good or bad; they are simply windows into the soul,
yes,
and you need to use that window to learn more about yourself. And once you recognize, like, yeah, I'm furious. And this happens to me. I teach high schoolers. And if anyone's ever dealt with someone who's 15, 16, you're going to get frustrated with them. But recognizing, why am I frustrated by this? and using it as a mirror and a microscope into myself is such a healthier way for me to then grow as a teacher rather than, oh, this idiot won't do his homework ever. Well, I'll just keep failing, 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 rather than like, why am I frustrated? Well, I'm frustrated because this individual has the capacity to do very well and they're not. So why is that? And then I can explore more of it. Whereas I'm using then that emotion as a window rather than letting it guide me, which is one of the big kind of lessons within the book that each of the characters kind of experiences that if I want to grow to be the person I want to be, or the person that at one point, say like destiny needs me to be, I need to cut out this part of myself. I need to actually use this to look at myself and say, is this actually helping me? Is that 3 bedroom, 3 bathroom
Yeah.
house helping that individual? Are they saying, this is holding me back from who I could be in 5 years?
Well, because do you remember the Truman Show?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the whole point of the story, was that they deliberately made him nearly drown when he was a child because the show was based on him living on the island. So they created a traumatic event so he would never learn to swim and would always be afraid to cross the bridge. And then on the other side of the island was the sea. And that's how we're going to keep you here. They deliberately created a traumatic event with the understanding that he would never leave the island because the trauma would stop him. His fear of nearly dying again, of nearly drowning, of losing something, is, well, we can now keep you here. And that's effectively what trauma does to us if we don't learn how to live with it.
Yeah. And it. It's something that everyone struggles with.
Yeah.
And it's something that I don't, there's no, I mean, I'm sure people of various religious backgrounds or philosophical mindsets can point to Marcus Aurelius or Jesus or Buddha or whoever they want of like, well, this person didn't. It's like that they didn't is why you write about them because it is so exceptional,
Yes.
right? It's no one would give a rip about Jesus if he didn't have the life he had, along with the subsequent death and resurrection. If you believe that, it's the individual that has led such an extraordinary life by example that, yeah, that is worthy of writing about. Holy shit, let me look at this individual. And most of us, I mean, the Christian would say we're all sinners. The Buddhist would say we recognize that all existence is suffering and we need to come to terms with that. It's depends on which philosophy, theology, whichever one you want to look at, but it's your you achieve a higher sense of self and you achieve a kind of higher, I think, state once you take that mirror, you look at yourself and you say, what is holding me back? And one of the things that I've struggled with completely is doing things like this. Like I hate selling my book, which sucks if I'm trying to sell my book. It's to me, it's this. I mentioned it at the start of why am I even like? Why should you listen to me?
Yeah.
There's always that self-doubt, and for me, it's the getting out and talking to people like you, meeting other people I've done podcasts with. That it's well, why should you buy this book?
Yeah.
And there's always that voice saying like, what do you even have to say about this? And so me culling my soul is trying to cut out that doubt. You can't find a single professional athlete. You can't find a single high achieving individual in many professions I, that has the level of self doubt about their work.
I was having a conversation with somebody about this yesterday on one of my episodes and with a friend the other day, and it got sparked by a clip I saw with Andrew Wilson on Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan it's just like, I can't remember how they got into the conversation, but Andrew Wilson said, the further up the kind of the famous tree he's got, the more stupid they've become. He said, I always thought they'd be more intelligent, They would be just, and he says, "I'll find it and I'll send it to you," and and I was just like, that makes no sense. But then I literally realised while listening to this, that still kind of imposes on me with podcasts. As soon as somebody says to me, "Oh, what do you want to be like Joe Rogan?" It can crush me. It can stifle because, well, like, yeah, obviously I do, but I don't want to compare myself to Joe Rogan because he's been listened to by billions of people. I'm still in the thousands, and he can get millions in an episode. I've not even had 1 million in total, and but of course I want that level of podcast success. Of course I do. I've got a podcast I've been working on for 6 years now. And but ultimately I still just want to talk to people. It's just like but at the same time is like you when you're writing the book, you have a full-time job. You have a wife, you have a child, you've got another child on the way. But you have to, well, if I want this to work, if I want this to happen, I have to somehow write the next book. And of course you want it to be the next Harry Potter series, the next Tolkien series. Of course you do. What? Otherwise, why would you write a book? Well, that starts with, well, I just have a story that I want to tell. But once it's written, you want it to have the potential to reach its full audience. And then you like, and this is the next thing that trips. Well, how do I do that next? Like, what do I do next that makes it? But then you have to go and tell people, well, I think my book is better than that one. I think you should spend your money on my book because it deserves your attention. And and when you say it out loud like that, you're like, oh, you fucking arsehole. Who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
But you're just like, no, I just desperately believe in what I'm achieving. But unfortunately, I've had no level of success. Because if you look at an athlete, like, if it's, I'm going to just choose sprinting because it comes simple. But they can judge their level by personal bests. And then so they might not win or qualify for the next competition or win in that competition. But if they've done a personal best, I'm on track, pun not intended, but I'm on track and we're getting better. And then if they can rise to the occasion at a big competition, they can place in the top 3. Well, that's what leads them to the gold medal in the Olympics. But you and I don't have a way to influence what we're trying to achieve. An athlete can train longer, train harder, train smarter. And personal bests are the competition within yourself. Or you and I don't have the competition in ourselves. We've achieved the competition. We've won. You've written the book. You've written 2 books. The next one will happen. We've already won the competition. Just nobody is there watching us hold up a gold medal. And it's just like stadium's pretty small. No crowds have turned up again. And it's a bit like that for me. I'll put a podcast episode out there, and it's like stadium's looking empty today.
It's kind of one of those islands that no one's allowed to go to. That's like you could be the fastest sprinter there, but no one's no one's turned up watching. Which that's, I mean.
But if you don't lace up those boots and have a go, it's never going to happen. And that's that comfort zone you and I both have to leave every time we do what we're doing. It's the next part of the journey. Is, well, it didn't. We didn't win that battle last time. No, but there's still a war. There's, you just have to. Every page that you've written, well, you have to dust yourself off and now write the next one. You have to dust yourself off every day and do the next bit. Every podcast I record, well, I have to dust myself off and do the next one. And it may never climb to the top of a number 1 anywhere. Okay, but if I don't turn up, it's never going to happen. And every time I do turn up, the opportunity for it to happen is there. And that's the only thing I can control, like the characters in that story. The only thing they can control is the choice they make about tomorrow. And and
that's, I think for me, it's the you have to, every time opportunity knocks, you have to open the door. There's absolutely that. But there's also, I think there is a bit of kind of, I don't know what the exact term would be for it. The thing that comes to my mind, kind of Van Goghism of like,
Yeah.
if this doesn't take off in my lifetime, I will still be happy that I did it.
Yes.
And that's the, I mean, it's not a great example to use because he didn't he off himself, but
Yeah.
it's the, I mean, he suffered from depression his whole life. Oh, it's not working. But I'm not saying that's happening. It's the, I I would regret being 85 and not having it.
Yeah. It's that.
And whether it becomes the next Harry Potter or Game of Thrones HBO special, like that'd be great. I mean, I pray for that.
Of
That'd
course.
be so fantastic for me, for my family. I mean, I'd love to come on a podcast with you and say like, yeah, so we got filming next week in
Yeah.
Mallorca, or whatever it is.
Christ, you think I wouldn't want that? Can you imagine if I've got the exclusive? Because the first thing I'm going to
That'd
say
be
is,
great.
I want the exclusive podcast because you're being filmed. It's turned into the biggest thing going. Somebody might actually tune in and watch that episode.
It's yours. I'll turn down Joe Rogan.
No, you can do him next.
I can't. Yeah, I can't right now, Joe. You get your number too.
Yeah. But
but
it is. But do you remember? I was thinking about.
I would love that.
Do you when you said?
But at the end of the day, it really is like just having it out there.
Yeah.
To me, is that sense of I have done it. I've finished that race. I want to do the next one, the next one, the next one. So.
When you were talking about Van Gogh, do you remember Bob Ross, the curly-haired painter?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, more people have watched him now that he's dead, since he stopped painting.
Yeah.
Than when he was alive. More people, when you think of the generations that know who he was, but were not alive when he was doing that show.
Well,
the joy of painting, and it's just like that's literally Van Gogh.
I hope my creative success finds me before I die of whatever cancer he died from.
Yeah, but it's sad, isn't it? You can't. Every now and again, I have somebody on the podcast who is often retired from a profession where they were with famous people. I had a really nice guy on here, and he was the scriptwriter. He wrote all 9 seasons of Xena Princess Warrior. And he was a really nice guy, like genuinely nice. He's worked with Kevin Costner, Clint Eastwood, everybody. He's completely retired from the industry now. And he's just like, if you in your mind, you're like, oh my God, this guy's, And afterwards, he was just like, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And like how you and I first kind of, when we met on the podcast, after we stopped recording, him and I carried on talking for another hour and a half, just like you and I did. And because he was just enjoying a good conversation. And I was just fascinated to listen to him without having to kind of ask him too many questions about famous people. But then there's that part in your head that's just like, he could one day be in a room talking to somebody who does, oh yeah, I did this interview, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I had a conversation with this guy. He was great. You should talk to him. And then, when I think of the rooms he's been in with the people he's spoken to, you could have anybody who, and if they enjoy it. And one of the things he thanked me for, he'd had a really difficult problem. He'd lost a child during his, and although it was in his press pack, I never asked him about it. And and after we'd finished, he thanked me for not asking about it. And I just said, you didn't bring it up. I said, I saw it in the press pack. I said, but you didn't really steer a conversation in that direction. And he said, I hate the fact it's in there, but they insist on it being there. And I just...
Yeah, there's...
But I was lucky, because he never steered it anywhere near that direction. I just left it alone.
Yeah.
But another day, I could have asked him.
But that's a very intimate thing to press about. But it seems... I don't know.
I think it'd be a bit strong for me to say against his wishes it's in the press pack, but he has said he doesn't. He did say he didn't like it being in there, and I found out that afterwards, and that was one of the things he was really grateful I never asked him about. And of course, naturally, as we're talking, I didn't ask him about it anyway. I just carried on, just moved on from the conversation. I didn't press him about it at all. Yeah. Because it's just like, okay. But that's the sort of thing that in my mind, is like, well, that's what might make him recommend me to somebody. and
Yeah.
but that hasn't happened. But okay, but you when there's a over.
Yeah.
I was talking to a chap last month who he emailed me afterwards. He was like, "Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you. It was great." And that was because he come through a publicist sort of thing, and he still took the trouble to email me. And but during that thing, we were talking about a book he had wrote, and it's been picked up by a film production company in Canada. And I sort of jokingly said to him, "So, well, I want you back on then if that becomes a thing and it becomes a film being made."
Yeah.
I said, I want to talk to you again about it.
Yeah.
And he went, "Yeah, absolutely." He said, "I'll come back and talk to you." And I was just like,
Yeah.
Jesus, that actually might happen. But then I've had famous people on and nobody watched it anyway, and they didn't promote it. So I don't. It always reminds me of I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. Stereophonics. Do you know the band, the Welsh band Stereophonics?
The name is familiar.
Yeah. So I watched them at O2 in London. A fantastic band. The lead singer has got such an amazing kind of voice. The power behind his voice just does not come across on the songs. But live, it's like, whoa, that guy doesn't need the mic, But like between every song, he's telling the audience about how these songs come about. And this is an irritating part for me because I can never remember the song he was talking about. But he mentioned that this song, which was their biggest hit off this album, when they were doing the album and everything, there's always stuff left over. And he said, then the producer's like, "What's this?" He said, "It's just some shit." He said, we don't like it, and we're not finishing it, and we're not interested. And the producer was, no, I like that. That's going on the album. They're like, "No, it's not." And the producer's like, "Yeah, it is. We're going to finish the song, and it's going on the album." And it turned out to be the biggest hit of the album. And he said that because what he was talking about, he said, for everything we have, and with this international band, we've got number one songs, number one albums. We still don't know what we're doing. It's the people in the background, the producers, they're the ones, and without them, we wouldn't have any success. And he then also sort of told these stories about when they were an up and coming band. They would, like he said, we sent cakes to like record producers, and we sent trainer, and inside would be a tape. You'd find. He said all these gimmicks trying to get listened to, trying to get heard.
Yeah.
And he said, and then they managed to get a stint on Radio 1 or something. Somebody played one of their songs, and Richard Branson phoned them. And he said, and it just turned out the way we actually got heard in the end was just by turning up and singing songs. Every gimmick, everything we tried before and after never worked. Turning up, writing songs, singing songs, and we got heard. And now here we are. And things like that, I remind myself of things like that. And there was someone, Carlin, he's a history podcast, and he's been on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of times, and Tim Ferriss, and he said something similar. Dan, is it Dan Carlin, Hardcore History or something? I think it might be. I think it's him. Let me just quickly look it up while I'm talking to you, and I'll carry on the story. And he was talking about sometimes when you're trying to do something, he says, and you can lose. Dan Carlin, Hardcore History. It's a fantastic podcast, and he was talking about. It always seems like there's a wall in front of you when you're trying to do something. He said, and there's this wall that you're always trying to get through. And he said, you're just waiting for that moment. And he said, and then one day somebody knocks a brick out, and that thing, that person, that organisation, that thing, whatever it is on the other side is there, can suddenly see you. And it can now see through that wall that's been this big obstacle that you've been trying to get past. He said, but if you don't have a body of work behind you, there's nothing for anybody to see. And that, so it's just like when I think about, I'm nearly at 250 podcasts, what I really have is a body of evidence that people can see that I know how to do a podcast, and I know how to talk to people. And, and that's 2 books. That 2 books is, actually there's a fantasy series here that has in-depth
Yeah.
characters, it has journeys, it has a theme, it has a place, and it's going to have an ending, and it can take people to different places to enjoy the emotional ride, that sort of
Hmm.
cliche roller coaster. But the
Hmm.
fantastic thing is, the roller coaster is 3 different rides in 3 different places, and
Hmm.
there's several different seats I can take on to enjoy it at every
Hmm.
moment. And I'm going to be great frightened at the beginning, holding on in the middle, and going to be grateful at the end. And
Yeah.
but without those 2 books behind you on the shelf, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. And it's having the body of work. I used to pitch agents for the first book, and then I kind of stopped for a number of reasons. One, because if anyone who's writing fiction, you just go through the agent list, and the
Hmm.
agents essentially are gatekeepers to publishers.
Yes, they are.
You cannot pitch publishers cold. Gone are the days of Stephen King just drunkenly sending it to his publisher and saying, like, "Is this any good?" And they're like, "Oh, we'll pick this up." Uh, and it really is. I think that's where that wall comes in, and it feels very defeating
Mm.
because there's the agents gatekeeping, which then has opened up indie publishing quite a bit, which is great, especially on the surface. The problem is there's so many books that are published every single day. There's the publicist I was working with when we first met told me some outrageous number that I couldn't believe it. There's something like 4,000 new books are published every single day.
Mm.
And it then becomes, all right, we're all static. Every one of us wants to be the next Berenstain Bears or Harry Potter or um, Bob Ross, right?
Yeah.
We all have within us this idea of like, I am better than everyone else in this field for this reason. This is the story I want to tell, and you should pick it up over all the others because of XYZ reason. But the static there is it can be very disheartening, especially when it's the easiest ways to mitigate it are going through essentially these editorial reviews that each one of them isn't cheap. Um, which the, the frustration I had with the first one, I had a couple editorial reviews. One was Book Life, which I've done for that one for the second one as well, which I should be getting that back any day now. Unfortunately, it takes 6 weeks or so. And when I ordered it, I was in the middle of buying a new house and moving. Um, so life uh, always interrupts with things. Anyways, Book Life was great with their first review, and it was very clear that they had read it, um, and they had some good things to say about it. I had another editorial review from Kirkus, which it was very clear from their review they didn't account for the metadata that this is not a young adult book. This is classified either as adult or new adult. That's the age range for it. So I've had high school students that I teach read the book. They've enjoyed it. I actually had one this last group of classes ask like, "When's the second one coming out?" Which is
Yeah.
great to hear. And it was just clear that the reviewer for Kirkus they actually had some plot point screw ups in their review. That was like, why am I paying $700 for you to not read this? Or essentially, and this is what other indie writers have said online, is it was clear they read the first couple chapters and the final couple chapters, which for certain narratives works when it's a multi-perspective and there's 6 unique characters, each with their own beginning and their own end and their own,
Mm.
you know, very transformative middles. It's your way to kind of cheat through reading the book doesn't work as well, which then had there was a total plot point that was just wrong. That actually I emailed Craig. I was like, this doesn't happen in the book. I don't know what you're reading. But they never really did anything about it. For them, it was you're an indie author who will take your money, we'll read a couple things, and we'll chalk up whatever we want to it.
I think if you look at book promotion now, there's because it's changed since I wrote my book. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's. I mean, I'm trying to think when I published. I published in about 2012, I think.
Okay.
And so since then I've moved on to podcasts. You know, so I
Mm-hmm.
mean that's an interesting point, because if the podcast actually blows up, well then I'll probably end up with a really successful book. So it's like, all right, I'll write another kind of really weird spiritual book, because I'll have an audience. But my
Mm-hmm.
I don't. When I emailed you, I talked to you about AI films and stuff like that. I don't know if you saw the email,
Mm-hmm.
because for $700, somebody would make you a fucking amazing. You know, because I've started trying to learn how to do AI videos and stuff, and you can do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
prompts, but you can
Mm-hmm.
see that there's this, you know, £10 a month gets
There's
you.
still a learning curve for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fucking steep one. Do you know what I mean? I was trying to
Yeah.
do because when you ask it about, like, you know, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people can pick me up on this, because I'm just trying. So I already have ChatGPT, and I also use a software called. I use another one called Venice, because you get two such different opposing points.
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT doesn't specifically do video. Venice does have a video option, but when you actually
Mm-hmm.
ask Venice and ChatGPT, they like, well, use this software, and they'll even
Mm-hmm.
give you prompts. And if you like ask for, say, a beautiful woman, that's too vague.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up actually having to do like, well, it needs to have, like, she needs to have this type of legs, has to have breasts.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful about this, well, you need not safe for work software. Right, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you then got to download that thing so that you can use language like breasts. So, because what you have to do, if you don't have all the prompts exactly, you don't get the consistent figurine or the consistent figure. And you're just like,
Yeah.
right, okay, right. So, you know, and all I'm trying to do is learn how to use the software. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even sure what I can do with it yet. And is it even going to be
Yeah.
worth me my time and trouble to, you know, because maybe a David Watson podcast with a figure of David doing something and an AI
Mm-hmm.
version might actually be a good promotion tool, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I ended up with this. I can't remember. I think I misdone the prompt or something. But anyway, she ended up with legs where her chest should be and breasts where her legs should be, and it's just like that's not what I was asking you to do at all. Did you,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
how do you even think
Yeah.
a woman? Because like if you just put in woman, you'll get
Mm-hmm.
also. So if you want it to be an attractive woman, you have to say a beautiful, attractive woman. If you want it to
Mm-hmm.
be an old woman, you have to put. If you want it middle age, and so there's all these prompts. But then people say, well, you got these apps. Yeah, but the apps already have a pre-configured thing that you pick from. So it's again.
Yeah.
So I'm in no position to suggest what is a good way to do it, because I'm still, since
Mm-hmm.
that email, I'm still trying to learn how you do it, and
Yeah.
I think I've come to the conclusion it won't work for me. It's not going to do what I want it to do. But it is, like you say, if you're spending $700 for an organisation to review, then you could probably get an AI expert to do you a 1 minute, 1.5 minute reel of the book. Like I said, opening up. The cover of the book
Yeah.
opens up. The characters run
Yeah.
out of the book across a battlefield or through a medieval
Yeah.
village or
Yeah.
whatever, and then jump into the next book. And they could do that
Yeah.
to Hollywood standard, probably for less than $700,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
just plow $700 into Amazon advertising in the high fiction
Yeah.
genre, and you will
Yeah.
probably actually sell some books, who will then get reviews,
Yeah.
and then it is. I you know,
Yeah.
I think the most success I had with my book was when I just did Amazon advertising in that genre, and I think because one of the things that, because the book would come under, it has a category, it has a niche.
Mm-hmm.
That's the market you want to hit, and there's
Yeah.
a valid argument that advertising anywhere other than a bookshop is actually
Yeah.
just a scattergun approach. It's whereas if you actually target a specific market, well, then it's almost
Yeah.
shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah. And I mean, with that being said, it's when I first came on your podcast, it was, you're not the all right, here's the next high fantasy
No.
fiction book. Last week we talked about this fiction fantasy book. This week we're talking with Martin Nelson. It's you're everything, and
Yeah.
it's part of that is one of the things I enjoyed about the first kind of media run I did with Children of the Dying Hearth was it it threw me into the waters of like what is that media
Yeah.
thing look like? I mean, I'm not on Good Morning America,
No.
but there were I think four podcasts. One of them, fantastic podcaster Roger Nichols, who's also out of Oregon, and I reached out to him. Unfortunately, he's got some health issues, so I may go back on with him. I may not. It's kind of up to him and his what's going on there. But it was great. We talked. It was 30 minutes plus, so short compared to our conversations, but it was great for that niche of we're just talking books, and it was very clear he read it. It was very clear he liked it. It was very clear that this was the kind of the market that I want to be pitching to. And then there were others where I was booked for like morning shows in Indiana, and so I'd wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and have a 5:30, 10-minute phone call with a radio show that is, in terms of the market, that really was very scattergun. But from my working with it, it made it. It really helped with my elevator speech. It really
Yeah.
helped
Yeah.
with
Yeah. I,
like, all right, if I really do have 10 minutes to talk to someone and they're asking
yeah.
quick questions, what's your book about? It's like, well, I can go into detail of every six character, but then we're out of time. And so the the learning process of that was it was really nice. At the same time, it was one of those things of that felt to me like the training. So now I can pitch the book podcasts. I can pitch whether it's Instagram or TikTok people who are like, "Hey, I'm doing is fantasy books. Well, let me talk to you for 10 minutes and here's my stuff." Rather than let me go talk to someone in Cincinnati at 4 a.m. on a morning show while people drive into work. Like that isn't going to hit a lot of listeners that will really buy the book. So,
But it's interesting because I it does fascinate me because once upon a time, because you were mentioning earlier, gatekeepers. Well, publishers were the gatekeepers, and then Amazon knocked that door down. But in doing so, created a huge noise that you have to raise above. Then podcasts come down, and that broke the media being the gatekeepers to what people could hear. But in doing so, created a massive element of noise. But it means that you and I can talk. You and I can create the media. We can create the noise. We just haven't figured out yet how we turn the volume up so that those that want to listen. Well, because it's there's a confusion that people are like, you got to turn the volume up so people can hear you. No, you have to. What you turn up is the volume for the people that want to listen to you, because you're not trying to put people off anything. You're not trying to. I don't want the woman that's interested in bakery. She might not. There's nothing that she's going to like about what I do, maybe. So I'm not trying to attract her in the first place. I'm not trying to catch the fishing dude or the diesel dude. He's just like, look, you don't know. Those guys have their own interests. Those people. It's I'm after people who want to listen to the conversations I have with people. So that's a niche noise in its own way, and I've got to establish where those listeners are and who they are, and they're the random folk. Because I'm not in I'm not a golf podcast, I'm not a football podcast, but in doing so, it opens me up for the fact that lots of people who write books will come and talk to me, because one, nobody wants to talk to them to some degree if they're not already famous or not already doing something. I'm always getting first time writers, and I'm also always getting people with inexperience with media work. So it's just like, I'm the perfect guy for you to come and talk to, because I'll talk about your dog. I don't care.
Well, I think one of it's your podcast is one of, I think, the most humanizing, because it really is. It's the kind of everyman
Yeah.
sort of anyone can, and can come on, because it's the have a conversation, and it's I think in a very polarizing world, it is perfect because it's we're not sitting here talking. I mean, we've had previous podcast conversations about politics,
Yeah.
and like if someone wants to talk about that, great. At the same time, it is allowing a space for just human conversations, and I
Oh,
think that's something that is having the hyper focused niche podcast of whether it's oh, now I'm blanking on his name. He has all the bunch of political guys on there, but
yeah. Well, Tim Pool,
whether it's politics
Tim Pool or
or
Tucker Carlson or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, it's great. You found your audience, you
Yeah.
found your thing, and have those conversations. Um, at the same time, and this is something that so my background, I've said before, is in history. I have a master's in history, focus on medieval. And one of the things that was huge when I was in grad school was we've heard ad nauseum about the bigwigs of history, whether it's one of the many kings that England has had, or whether it's issues with Mary Queen of Scots, or if it's Pope Benedict, or the guys that are writing things and having things written about them, but having a the opposite where you're what did the everyman do
Yeah.
in 1312? And to me, that's kind of the nice thing about this podcast is you're talking to the everyman who just is like,
But
how do you balance being a father full-time job
yeah.
with writing a book?
But
And
I
this,
genuinely
yeah,
more interested in the
yeah,
guy, the medieval guy in
yeah,
1312 who was the blacksmith, than I am in the king. I actually am.
yeah,
There's a part of me that wants to know how he lives, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
and I was lucky in a way that when I first started the podcast, my I allowed my heart to follow what it wanted to do versus what my brain
hmm
told me to do, because I knew
hmm
as a podcast platform it would be difficult to get traction and it would always be a slow growth. And there you go. That was Martin and his new book, his old book. There will be another one in the series. The links of where to find Martin and his books will be in the descriptions. If you have any ideas on how Martin can promote his books, what he could do, people he could reach out to, please get in touch with him. He'd love to hear it, or get in touch with me and I'll pass on the information. And as ever, actually, I've never said this before, but anyone who's ever supported one of my guests, looked at what they've done, bought or purchased them, thank you so much. And if you do buy any of Martin's books, please do leave a review, please. It goes so far. It is, people really underestimate how far a review goes and what it does to the algorithm. And as people like myself and Martin, we do genuinely feel bad that we're always asking people who support us already to do a little bit extra. So, but I don't mind asking for Martin. Please do everything you can to support if you're buying his work. And with that, thank you. Wherever you're from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.